All right, guys, so a couple key things here as we're cruising around looking for new spots. And this whole end of the lake is all undulating bottom. There's old gravel quarries and everything out here. Really important that you fish spots, not areas.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so defined back here with how the bottom is coming up and down. These fish are on specific transition points.
So that's very obvious, okay, out here in some of the fishing we've already done, and that's what we're looking for here, guys. We're looking at the side imaging and everything else and finding those key spots with the contour maps and then the side imaging or the down scan to make sure we're right there. But that same concept is just as important when we did the Cherry Creek fishing.
Absolutely.
We're fishing tiny little spots like the size of this boat. You know those waypoints because you're there a lot. We went straight to those waypoints and caught them.
Yeah, and it's the same thing that happens, especially with these walleyes. They will sit on tight spots, and even out at Jumbo that one day, there's one big hump out there, and we're right on it and catching fish like crazy.
And as soon as you get away from that, then you don't catch them. So first of all, you need to know how to find the spots, whether it be with your map, whether it be with producing your own maps, which is very common these days, or just reading your sonar. Look at this, we could probably catch one right here. I'm thinking right on that corner right there, guys. But we're headed for another spot. But at any rate, if you produce your own maps, great. If you download social maps, Lawrence has social maps. You can download those that basically community maps that everybody uploads data to. That can be a really good call. The other thing can be just watching your graph and marking waypoints. I mean, for many years as a fishing guide, I just marked waypoints, had lots of waypoints, never really knew what they were other than they were good spots to fish. I found a hard structure change, something like that. Bottom content. How much you watch bottom content? Hard bottom, soft bottom?
Especially in a lake like Cherry Creek that doesn't have quite the level of structure as out here. Right. You can find areas that have small chunk rock next to areas with mud, and the walleyes are piled up right on that line.
Yeah, so. makes a big difference. I just got back from fishing in Minnesota. He's like, well, we want to fish the first drop off. I'm like, okay, so I'm looking out. I've never been there before. We're looking at the graph as we go out. The bottom rolled like 18 inches maybe, and it was a subtle little roll. And he goes, oh yeah, there's our drop off. And I'm like, that's not, the lake I live in, a drop off's like 40 feet vertical, you know, like it's just, but it's relative to your lake is the point being. And so like you said, at Cherry Creek, there may not be the big structural changes or depth changes, so it could be the bottom content.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about cover? Like for instance, out here, we saw a bunch of barrels on the bottom, the old concrete piping. Do you fish specific cover as well, or are you fishing more structural elements for walleyes?
For walleyes, not so much. For bass, obviously, yes. But the walleyes, I have a lot more success staying away from that heavy cover. Maybe a weed line, but not necessarily if there's more rock piles, we would do more of that out here. But rather than those concrete pipes, and that's not so much. More of the edges of the drops.
More of the edges of the drops. They like the structural changes. And it's probably a safe bet to assume that since the more defined of those edges are, which is what we were keying on today, the harder they are. Because if they were soft, this built was built in the 50s, they would wear down and they get real soft and rounded. When you find ones with a hard drop on them, the erosion hasn't been able to affect them. They've got to be a harder bottom.
Absolutely.
So that can be a really key thing as well. But the big thing too, you have to trust your graph. When we looked at spots, there's no fish on them. If they don't show up on here, then we're not fishing there. There's other structural places to go fish. I know you follow your Laurentians all the time as well.
I always say that you can catch fish out of a bathtub if you had the right electronics. Yeah. It's real nice to fish out of the big Ranger boat. In reality, the electronics are the thing that's really paying the bills.
Yeah, the way I talked with people about the big boat, it's really a giant tackle box. It's insulated like a cooler and it has good electronics. But I can haul all my stuff around it and everywhere I go. It's like a big giant tackle box. So those are key things. Any other key things for a guy that's going to key on offshore structure for walleyes? A couple other key things real quick.
Being able to keep yourself on the spot is critically important.
Boat control.
And also orienting yourself with how the wind is going to be blowing can also be important. It started blowing a little bit. Right now, we're not dealing with very much, but if it's blowing 30 miles an hour,
or even 15 miles
an hour, and you're trying to fish a light jig, which sometimes is the key, you have to change yourself and orient your boat so that you can fish downwind or upwind on a situation like that. But boat control is critical. Whether you're using an anchor or a spot anchor or a power pole, you have to use one of those things to keep you on
to hold you spots. There. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we're not drifting areas, we're fishing spots. One of the key things too on the Laurentians, the way I have mine set up, I have what's called the look ahead lines. So they basically shoot ahead extensions, and it tells you which way the boat's pointing as well as which way the boat is actually moving. And those two are almost never the same. If you're a pilot out there, it's course and heading, right? Well, the knowing which way the boat's pointing all the time can be really, really important versus moving, because then you know where you are specifically in relation to your structure. Because GPS, when the boat is sitting still, will often be rotating. It's not a perfect science. If you know the boat's always pointed this way and the hump's always that way, it doesn't matter which way the course is. It's the heading that's really important. And so by having those, it makes it really easy to know where I am in relation to my waypoints. It can be a really key thing as well. But the offshore structure bite, when we decide we want to go film something like that, he's one of the first guys I call for walleyes, and I think after you've watched all these shows, you'll see why.